I'd like to have a little chat about branding. The first thing about branding that strikes me is the name branding. That's kind of something you do to an animal. That's something you might do to a slave, and it's all about ownership. And that's a massive problem in and of itself, and something that the Museum of Care we're looking to question quite deeply. But also, I'm a designer, and I take the coercion of design quite seriously. We've seen it happening for the last 40 years, really, where design isn't really about the imagination anymore. It's about making profit for people. And branding is at the center of making profit for people. And that's seriously wrong because actually design has a much, much better past. The past I like to think of when I'm thinking about design myself is the past of people like William Morris. And in my country, he's probably not as famous as he should be. There should be statues of him almost everywhere so people can see him every day when they walk down the street. But he's a wonderful man who created the arts and crafts movement back in the 19th century. And he wasn't just a designer, he was an absolute firebrand. And he talked about returning to craft as a method to get people to come together and work together and live together more communally. Those are the sort of ideas that we should begin to think about again within design, instead of thinking about flogging something as simple and stupid as Pepsi Cola or Coca Cola. Because let's face it, what you're offering there is not a choice. This is illusory choice. A choice between two forms of fizzy pop isn't a choice at all. And in fact, who cares about having fizzy pop? Nobody should care about that. Those aren't the choices that we want. So we need to give the people of this world better choices as designers, and we can do that. I'm thinking here about a man called Milton Glazier, a wonderful designer who died relatively recently, who created a logo which everyone knows and loves called I Heart New York or I Heart NY. And he did that free, and he did that free for the city of New York. And it wasn't the city of New York that we know today, not the Trumpian nightmare of huge sort of mega towers and massive corporations. It was a bankrupt city, a city where people were scared to walk the streets. But it also was a city full of imagination. It was a time at the beginning of the 80s which saw Keith Haring, the Stonewall riots. It saw the emergence of some of the great artists of our time. And they emerged out of this state of uncertainty, which is basically the opposite of what branding tries to create. Branding tries to create certainty. And certainty, to be quite frank, is totally boring. And if we continue on this path of certainty, all we have is a certain future that will end up necessarily in the destruction of this planet, because we can't have infinite growth and infinite consumer products. That's just not possible. But we can have infinite care and freedom. And that's something David talked about a lot.